To hear Mary's again, even though I don't know it all, because every time I meet you, there's another layer that I unpeel.
I was going to say, do you want to have a conversation? It's up to you.
I'm in your hands.
Yeah, all right, we'll do a bit of both then.
We'll do a bit of both.
Yeah.
All right, we'll both sit down and then we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm going to give you this, right? So, described by Princess Badiya. You do know who Princess Badiya is? Do you want to explain who Princess Badiya is?
Yes, so Princess Badiya basically set up, she was a Princess of Jordan, set up a charity for the Prince's Trust, and I did a lot of work for them in prisons and schools. And yeah, she's an incredible visionary.
Jordanian princess. I had to Google.
Yeah.
I thought it was a character from Star Wars.
That's a good name though, isn't it, for that? Yeah.
It's impressive. Described by Princess Badiya, or Darth Maul, as a very inspiring lady, Mary is a real force of nature. Introduced to the world of personal development, training, leadership and public speaking at the age of 17. Mary has since gone on to speak, train, work and volunteer with a variety of amazing individuals. She's a TED speaker, she's an international speaker, she's a Hay House author. She's often called to do interviews and sit on panels, focusing on supporting vulnerable women and young children. Affectionately described as, and I love this, as a medicinal storyteller. I know. Visionary community creator and lover. I love all of that. And facilitator of real conversations. Mary's vibrant personality, leadership skills and ability for seeing what is needed and communicating that with ease has also meant she has sat on advisory boards, been co-director and consulted with several well-known not-for-profits. She was one of the original members of the educational panel for the Prince's charity Mosaic and was nominated as Mentor and Coach of the Year and invited to Downing Street in recognition of her work with women and young people. She has an infectious laugh, you're going to hear.
Oh dear.
She genuinely walked into a room and the lights get turned up from 10 to 11. Oh. And you're an absolute joy to be with, truly. So I'm gonna hand over. And the interesting thing is we share a friend. I didn't realise.
Yeah.
Where's Daisy? Do you remember when we stayed in New York at that flat one? We were absolutely skin broke and that really nice posh bloke lent us his flat in New York.
No, he's not posh.
No, he's not posh.
He's not posh.
Rich.
He's rich, but he's not posh.
That's who Mary works for.
Yeah. Sorry? Do I work for the flat, did you say? Or do I work for him? I work for him.
Some things are not even worth asking about again, right?
There's that Daisy chat afterwards.
Mary, over to you. And I'll sit here and we can talk.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you. That is such a warm and lovely intro. I've only got my phone here to try and keep an eye on the time. But you know what? I'm going to put it away and you can just give me a kick. I'm obviously not literally, but... so I have to take my shoes off. I'm just going to take a moment as well. And it's lovely to see you all. And it's lovely to be invited. And I think sometimes there's so many stories that, things that happen to you in life that are those key moments that I think they're sort of those guiding lights, that sort of North Star moment, or moments that are really calling you to sort of question where you're at, who you are, how you're showing up, what you're saying yes to, what you should be saying no to, story of my life, more what I should be saying no to than what all the stupid things I've said yes to. And they're sort of like these gifts, sometimes unwanted, sometimes maybe gifts that feel like they take forever to unwrap, sometimes unseen. But I feel that all of these moments, these life-changing moments, are truly gifts. As cliche as they sound, they really are. And some of them can take a lifetime to really understand the why. And maybe there are some that we leave this planet and we never know why that thing happened, why we met that person, why we ended up where we ended up. But as somebody who's had many gifts, some more wanted than others, let's just put it that way. Some I woke up next to and others are like, oh. Just like, all lessons. some that would definitely take many lifetimes to work out, that's for sure. There are some that just really stick. And I think whilst, you don't want to be known for a moment in your life, what I have found is this moment and some moments really do massively change the trajectory of where you're headed, but not just for yourself, but for many people around you. And I'm going to get told off because the microphone's in a place where I put my hands a lot. So, sorry now. I've been told don't walk around, don't touch. As an ADHD person, that's a big ask. Normally I'm like in the corner over here, so I'm really like, stay still, Mary. So there may be some trigger warnings in my story, but just for those of you where if it does trigger something, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. I'm being very, very sensitive and mindful of what I share, because I always look around if there's younger ears in the room, or just to get a feel for the room. And I'm sort of going to tweak my story to make it for the lessons to come out. But some of it, they were hard lessons. But there was this one story that I've ended up writing about that, for me, has turned into a magical gift. It really has been a magical gift. And for those of you who don't know, when I was about 24 years old, I found myself on the side of a bridge in London. It was Tower Bridge, and I was ready to jump. And it's such a strange thing to say because it sounds so like, but in that moment, I have to say, it probably was the most peaceful I have ever been. And I remember I went to do a talk, and it was with the Telegraph or something. They were so, no, you can't say it was peaceful because that promotes bridge jumping. And I'm like, not being funny, but when you're at that point, this talk isn't going to be the deciding factor as whether you do or you don't do it. And I can definitely say that is not the thing you should be focusing on. But the key thing about why it was so peaceful, and that's really what I want to, I think, bring to life, is because I let go of everything I was worried about. I let go of all of the different labels and identities and things that I was carrying. Because in that moment, just go with me. Even if you've been here, mindfully go with me. A lot of the things that sort of push us forward to do stuff is a lot of the conversations we have in our head of who we should be, who we aren't be, what we should do. A lot of it is this chatter, internal chatter. And when you're sort of that quietens down and you actually focus on right now, in this moment, am I okay? In this second that I'm stood here, am I okay? We might be a bit rough around the edges. We might have pains and bruises. We might be dealing with health issues. There might be things going on in the family. But if you take a breath in and then you breathe out, that's all we need to do to live, is to be able to take a breath in and breathe out and just be here. And yes, there's layers to living, of course. And I'm not belittling any of them. But sometimes we get so lost in the layers and we're so far away from who we are, we start to believe our moment, life is happening out there in the layers. Whereas life is happening right here. And it's something I still have to remind myself of. But what I want to say is, in that moment on the bridge, I was so far away from me. So far away, I couldn't even see me. I couldn't feel me. I couldn't hear. I was numbed out. You know, when it's just so numb, dangerously numb, to the point where that actually made sense. It felt like the right thing to do. And I was a new mum, and I can remember thinking the world is such an awful place that I actually have to take my baby with me because nobody could care for him better than I felt that I could, and it would be unfair. So I was stood there, myself and my baby. And it felt normal. It felt okay. Because for me, it was going to be peace. And that's all I needed was peace. Thankfully, I didn't. And, life has funny plans. It was a Sunday morning. I used to live in Wapping. So I used to walk along the river and around Shad Thames. I don't know if any of you who know that area. And it was dead. There was never anyone around at that time. This time there were tourists, there were people on the, I was just like, at one point I was like, seriously? Like, this is my day and my moment. And I was like, oh my God, could I photobomb? Could you imagine photobombing? It's like that in the background as you're going off. I was just like, social media wasn't as big then. It wasn't a thing then, but my goodness. There were so many things and I had crazy thoughts. I can remember my bag was there and I thought, God, do I take my bag with me? Because it's got my keys and the cards. And what if someone breaks into the house or empties the account? Could you imagine the news with the family of like, she's gone and you broke? Oh, she's gone and someone. It was crazy thoughts. And then it went quiet. Really, really quiet and still. And I laugh because humour is my thing. I've always been as a child. It just comes naturally. But it's not me taken away from the severity of the moment. It was a really serious moment for me in my life. And my son, who is grown up now and a beautiful pain in the arse that never leaves home and just keeps coming back again and again and again, he's real testimony of when I look at him, I'm so glad that obviously I didn't. But for so many other reasons as well. And one of the key things that I learned from that moment, because we get these gifts, the important thing is we are being asked to learn from them. We're being asked to really know, who am I? Who am I choosing to be? Fundamentally, know thyself. Really for me is just that big message in life. And I can remember I came down off the bridge and I got my journal out. And I was like, okay, Mary, you need to really start asking yourself some better questions, some quality questions, because you cannot live like this. And part of the reason that I was on that bridge, as I say, the mass and stuff like that, is from the outside. How many of you have ever felt you're living two lives, or there's two personalities, or there's that external image, or the thing that, not even that you, yeah, thank you. It's also nice when you get one or two hands. You're like, am I really the only person who's like, I was like, oh God, I thought I was amongst friends. It's like, reaffirming, yeah, no, thank you. That's a big deal to have one or two hands today. But it's not even that you're promoting that image or you're promoting that message. Sometimes people just make assumptions about, oh, they're doing this, they must be successful, or they live here, so they must have this, or they're in this relationship, so they must be happy. Lots of, people also make assumptions that become labels that are put on us. But, at that time, I was early 20s, had a really externally successful business, was in what my family thought and friends thought was a great relationship, was stepmom to 3 boys and also had my baby, was living in a part of town. All these things that people are like, oh, your life must be great. You must be so happy, putting that label on. But I'd come from a wonderfully dysfunctional, messed up, beautiful, rich family who did not, to be fair, just did not sort their stuff out. My parents just didn't. And so it got passed down. That's the fairest thing I can say. They did their best and they could have done much better. They just could have done much better. And we all got to experience different versions of my parents. Like the parent that I grew up with are definitely not the parents my younger brother and sister grew up with, who would admit spoilt rotten, who were definitely not the same parents my older brother and sister grew up with, where they were left in care instead. So we had different parents as they were getting to know who they were. And so I'm saying this fairly because as a parent and as you get older, you understand the challenges of working out who the hell are you? Who is this real me? And what am I doing to survive and to sort of be present? And what am I doing that's a real expression of my joy, my passion, my heart, no matter what anyone else thinks around me? And sometimes they can be in conflict and there's that internal battle. And my parents were going through such internal conflict. It didn't just spill over, it was a tsunami in our family. And some of us, there was a big fallout. So I experienced a lot of abuse. I was in care, out of care, moved around a lot. And when you said grow up with sounds, which I loved, I sat there and I was like, And so much of your story, Dina, I just related to in different parts, bizarrely, because we grew up with a lot of music. My father used to work, he was in banking, but he also, before that, used to work in the music business, pressing records and doing stuff with Motown, like the Motown record label. And there was a whole room full of vinyls, Motown vinyls. So we grew up with just Motown. It was just background sounds, apart from Christmas Day where we had Bing Crosby. I don't know what was his thing with Bing Crosby. It just played non-stop, like it was literally like a form of torture. And I can even see the rocking chair with his red sweater, and I can see the cover. And one day I came home and my family teased me because my first 2 albums I bought were Phil Collins and Elton John. And then the third one was Kenny G. And then I was like, literally I was disowned. But you have these memories and things. So what I've learned is nothing is all good or all bad. It just is what it is. I have amazing memories of my childhood and some really horrific memories. And they've come together as a soup. And I really defy any memory you're sat with that's not working with you. Find the good in it as well. Not to be positive, but just to be honest. Because nothing is all good or all bad. It just is what it is. And life is like that. And sometimes the lows can be seriously lows, and then the highs can be high. We're trying to find that balance. But when I came down off that bridge and I sat there and I was like, okay, Mary, what are you going to do to sort this out? And I can remember seeing this chef in sort of like, and again, an assumption based on what this person was wearing, but they had those, the checkered chef trousers, the big comfy shoes, white top. And it was quite early. And I thought, what on earth are they doing going this early to a restaurant? And I knew the restaurant and it didn't open till the evening. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course, they're setting up, they're prepping for the day. And I sat there and I thought, Mary, you are not prepping for your life. You are living what I call a fast food life. Literally, when there's a list and everything is going through your mind, you just hit the pillow. It's like, you wake up, it's, and it's just go, reacting to the thing in the moment, what the children need, what work needs, everything. It's just go. It's just bang, 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 bang. And I define that as, for me, it's a fast food life. Put your order in, deliver it, get next, go. And I thought, what would it take to flip that and have a fine dining life? Really where you sit down and you have all those courses with all that cutlery and it's beautiful and you take your time and you savor it. And you can really enjoy your life as this incredible meal. Where you look at the menu and you read it and you want to order so many dishes because they all sound fantastic. I was like, it's time to live a fine dining life. And that involves prepping. You can't wake up the way you're waking up. And to slow things down, you need to almost interrupt some of these patterns. So I started to ask myself some questions. And the first question I asked myself was, Mary, every day when you wake up, ask yourself, what did you learn about yourself the day before? Just one thing that you've learnt that's just going to shift your focus. And so I used to wake up and I used to really like the things that I've learned. Was working, not working. And then the next question, and these questions didn't all come on the side of the bridge, and I didn't microwave my life to perfect. I forget a lot of these self-help books. I know half of the authors and they're a mess. Like, honestly, it's like, let's just keep this really real, okay? It's constant work in progress. So some of these questions came over several years and several big mistakes. But the next question was about acceptance. What is it you just need to accept about yourself, about this moment, about life? Doesn't mean you're resigned to it staying the way it is. Doesn't mean you agree with it. But right now, if there's nothing you can do about it, just accept it for what it is. And if you think about some of the things we fight that we cannot change, how would it feel to just accept it just is the way it is? And just let go. Just honestly let go. And just let it be. And it's amazing what changes when you stop fighting what you cannot change. And just let it be. And I remember one thing I used to say, I used to go around to my friend's house and she got away with stuff we'd never get away. The way she used to talk to her mum, I mean, a Ghanaian mother, you wouldn't dare. Like, you'd literally have to be stood at the end of the garden, shout it out and run. Even, like, and her slippers off and she'll be chasing you. And I tell you, those mums can run fast. So I was like, she used to say stuff and I'd be like, I'd never get away with that at home. That would be considered to be so rude. But I remember every time we go, I say to my friend, why do you talk to your mum like that? She's like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. She always says she loves me. So that's... And I was like, my gosh, the confidence that my friend had in the fact she could do what she liked and her mum loved her. I suddenly thought, God, I don't have that same confidence in, does my mum love me that much? Because my mum, she grew up, she didn't hear it, and so she didn't say it. We never got told, I love you. You know, I spoke to my mum as I got older, and she said, I just wasn't told it. So it wasn't something that even felt that I should say it. And so I decided as an adult, I was just going to accept that. And so every time I'd speak to my mum, I just said, I love you, mum. And I thought, I'm just going to say it. I'll not wait for her. And I did this for 2 or 3 years. And I remember one day at the end of a phone call, really quietly, she's like, I love you too. And I nearly dropped the phone and I sat and I was crying. I was so emotional. And then over time, she used to say, I literally got to the point where I came out, we'd get it. She's like, I love you, you're so amazing. She'd leave voice notes. And then she complained we didn't tell her that we didn't love her. And I was like, what's happened to this woman? Honestly, she just literally, and what's happening in big capital letters. You know, somebody like doesn't know how to write it with all these ridiculous emojis that somebody's obviously sent her. And some of them were like, Mum, don't ever send that to anyone else again, because whoever that came from, this is not an appropriate emoji to forward on to anyone. But it's like a different person. And it was just because the fight had gone. And can you know what it's like for somebody to also, how horrible it is for somebody to feel they want you to be better or to be different or to do something, because they feel that pull as well. And if they don't know what it is and they're not used to it, it's a horrible feeling. So I went on and I wrote these questions and I ended up with 9. I won't go through them all, but one was about writing about gratitude. Another one was just literally about trust. What is it? Where's I just going to let go and just trust the moment? And they've really become my friends over the years. And I've even used it in organisations with people and stuff. From that moment on the bridge, I've gone and worked with women and spoken to women who've come from abusive backgrounds. I sadly experienced things that you don't want to sit and listen to other women sharing those sort of stories. But when you're sat there and you can connect, because that's what we're really looking for, is to be seen, to be heard, that connection, to know that we matter. It's transformational from that moment on the bridge. I've also then been called into people to talk about postnatal depression, something that never really was spoken about. And afterwards I said, I think some of the symptoms you had was dealing with that, post-traumatic stress syndrome, all of these different things. And it opened up a whole other world for me. And yes, there's stuff you always have to deal with. But it's a gift that just keeps giving. Sometimes, it's hard. But that's life. So for me, stood here in this moment, my story and the bridge does not define who I am. I've had incredible adventures and I have a whole plethora of stories. I love books. When you talk about books, I used to read when I was younger under the street lamp, like push my bed up to the window and read and get told off all the time. There's so much that makes us who we are. There is so much. And I think there's so much that is untapped. And my invitation and my real gift from that moment is, what can we do to just let go and live? Because what I realized more than anything is I spent so much of my life truly afraid to live. Because my environment made life so scary that it was scary to live. Even though I did crazy things, it was scary to live. And I think life is asking us, know yourself, let go and live. Go for it. Why not? Because what's the point if we don't? Nobody wants an abridged, shortened, suppressed version of you. And it's a very, very, very awful place to live in, is that suppressed version of who we are. I know it, I've done it way too often. So if there's one thing I hope people will take from the story is just let go and live. because that's the whole point of life. I'm going to stop there. That's okay? Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You're amazing. I mean, you are amazing, truly. And you started with a really interesting sentence. You didn't start with it. It was about your fourth sentence in. You said, I was so far away from me.
Oh, God, yeah.
And like, I always talk about being 2 standard deviations away from the norm.
Yeah.
As being a place I actually really quite like.
Yeah.
But to be 2 standard deviations away from yourself, that must have been really scary. How did you get so far away from who you are?
I think, there's a couple of things there. One thing I would say, I do a lot of coaching now and I work with people. And the reason why I say this is most of us are not ourselves. It's actually more people are not who we are. Because I actually think, and not even intentional, I think life is about discovering who you are. And there's constant invitation and moments to know who we are. So if anyone says, I really know myself 100%, I actually don't trust that person, first of all. So I just want to say, I just want to put that out there. But to get too far away, how did I get so far away? Many things. And I'll keep it as... Well, you know, I was fostered when I was 3 weeks old into a family, sort of white, English, working class, beautiful family, grew their own veg, did everything until I was about 5. And so they gave me some amazing things, but also I lost that connection with my own culture, that, you know, Ghanaian culture, the side of me that's really important with my biological parents. And so when I was then taken back by my birth parents, I was in a whole different world where, you know, this other world with my foster parents, I always call them mum and dad, my first parents, they were very much, I was a wild child. They were like, I was curious. I was a pain in the backside. Like, so they let me be Wild Mary. But with my biological parents, there were very strict rules and responsibilities and things that you had to do. And Wild Mary was absolutely not tolerated. Absolute, like, Wild Mary became naughty and became, you know, bad. And even words like evil was used. You know, all of this sort of stuff. So you can imagine going from these two worlds where suddenly what felt natural and freeing, and it wasn't, I really was just, my parents were not bad parents. It was a very different culture. You speak when you're spoken to. You don't give your opinion freely the way I would. You don't correct your parents either when you think there could be a better way. You know, it was just a different culture. And I grew to love so much of it, but it was a big shift. Then add that to the fact that my parents came over into a country, you know, a black couple who really just wanted to belong and experienced a huge amount of racism, and othering. And I remember as a child feeling people mocking my father who were calling him their friend. And because you can feel things, and I could feel him trying so hard to be just liked and accepted. And what that does to a person, he was super intelligent and creative. And my mum, you know, they just wanted to be accepted. But for my dad, it was hard, really hard. And so you've got all of that spilling over. And so then what he wanted us to do is to be British. So he was also then trying to remove a lot of our Ghanaian culture so we could fit in. So you don't know who you are if you grow up in that. And then I went to a Catholic convent school. Yeah.
Naughty Mary.
Well, this is the thing. I started off in the local state school, but was a bit too naughty. And it was my geography. I blame it on the geography teacher. I have to say, if you're a geography teacher, you have to have a word, because there's too many geography teachers now who are just, I love them, and I gave my opinion in the lesson. I disagreed with him. I think I maybe disagreed one too many times with this geography teacher. He threw me out of his class, which is the worst thing he could do to me. Because if you don't give me a good reason for something, I will keep coming back. I'm just like that thing that I will just not let go. I need an answer. And he lost the plot. I physically got into a fight with me. And that, for me, I will dig my heels in and I will look you in the eyes and I'll be like, go for it. I just don't know what's wrong with me. And he just, so we end up, and then in the end, the school's like, I don't think she's suitable.
Not that he could be the problem.
Well, so
I'm assuming it was a
all girls Catholic convent school, which I didn't even realise it was all girls until 2 weeks in because I was determined there were boys were coming. I was just in denial. Every day I was just like, they just start a week later. They just start. Until one day I said, where are the boys? And they looked at me like, what the hell is wrong with you?
I love that.
And I went home crying. I think I cried for like a week.
You talked earlier, you talked about, there's so many bits here that really resonated with me. You talked about needing to change the way your parents were in order to not, I guess, pass it on. What is not transformed is transferred, and you were the bookend
Yes.
of that. That's really brave, because you never get the parents you want, right? You always get the kids that you need to correct you. And that's hard on a kid, right? It's always the way it is, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
And is Dad still alive?
No, he sadly passed away 2000 and, oh my gosh, 6 actually. Yeah.
Mum's still alive?
Mum, yeah, she's unwell unfortunately.
Of course, yeah.
And my foster parents, they died. And actually, it's really hard because, I mean, the relationship with my dad was quite hard because a lot of the abuse I experienced through my father, to the point where it became sexual abuse and I had to be removed from the home. And so I had this really unusual relationship with my father because as a child, it's really bizarre the way you see the world. I could see someone who wanted to be an artist and creative and everything like that, and who was in banking and loved music. And you know when someone who's also so far from who they're meant to be? And they're in so much pain. And it's not justifying anything that he did, because this is not about justifying, it's about just having compassion and understanding. I think for me, it was like, okay, so he was so far away. I've watched myself get so far away from myself. I saw how that impacted my parenting. I feel like I really have a responsibility to come home. I think that is the purpose of life. That is what it is about, is to come home. Because, you know, we've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. And I was like, if I deal with my hurt, then that reduces the hurt that I'm putting out into the world. And that's my responsibility to do that. And I love my son. He said the same to me when he was 18. Because I kept apologising about how I'd been, at times I felt like I'd let him down as a mum. And he said, and I always used to say to them, I will always love you. You may not like me, but my job is to work hard enough to pay for your therapy. And it used to be like this joke. And he said, Mum, I'm 18 now. It's my turn to take over me. Aww. And I mean, what an incredible, he's just like, let go. It's all good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping my kids are listening to that.
Oh, he still comes home and they're still more expensive by the day. Don't get me wrong. As he walks into the bedroom he wasn't supposed to return to. But
So that moment on that bridge.
Yeah.
In 2006.
Oh my gosh, dates. I was early 20s, so when was it? Well, I'm 50 now, so you can do the maths.
Yeah, so
I'm just not.
So it's 28.
Maths.
Yeah. Late 90s, right?
Yeah.
What was it that made you? I mean, and I completely get that moment of peace. I've had 2 incidents where I've been close to death. One's in a car not far away from here about 3 years ago, and I literally could feel every atom coming out of my mouth as I was breathing, and I've never felt it. My heart rate went down to about 32.
Wow.
And it was like clarity.
Yeah. It is.
It's unbelievable.
It is. You almost want to bottle it and be able to live that feeling every day without getting yourself to the edge. Because it's, I mean, I did a 10-day Vipassana, and I think I experienced that in and out of lots of other things. But that Vipassana is like a meditation. I would never put myself physically through that again. But I will. Meditation is amazing. I love it. All of that sort of stuff. Yeah. It is incredible. And I've had moments of that without being on the bridge. And I think that's also what life is about, is that clarity of, why do we worry so much? This is the thing. It's about things we cannot change in that moment.
But I love, you painted this like beautiful ADHD picture of you stood there with your son, and then you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with my bag?
Yeah, that literally.
Don't get in my fucking, don't get the photograph. Well, I'm going to jump off with it. Don't do that. Like, I hear this.
Yes. And I was wearing a long skirt, and actually bridges are quite high, is what I realised. And I'm quite short. And to get my leg up in that skirt, it was madness, absolute madness.
What was the one thing that made you go, I'm walking down?
It wasn't. It was a feeling. You know, some people say to me, "Oh, it was divine intervention." It was this, and I'm not necessarily, I suppose, religious, but I do believe that there is this cosmic, universal force that is really guiding us, or just giving us. I do believe that everything we need is here if we just open our eyes and look. And I could just feel, it was just a feeling of okay. And it was almost like I was being lifted down, as opposed to I'd consciously decided. It was just, I just felt that I was being lifted down.
Took over.
Yeah, it wasn't me. And the emotions were there, but it's like, you know, that feeling when you take someone by the hand and they're in shock or doing something, and you sit them down and you get them a drink and you calm them down. That was what it just felt like. That's the only way I could describe it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad it happened like that.
Yeah. So am I. Yeah. So otherwise you'd have to fill another slot tonight, wouldn't you?
That is the least thing I've enjoyed about it. And anyway, no one could fill a slot like you can fill a slot. I just want to finish before I ask some questions. I was really struck by moving out of foster care back into your birth parents, and how wild in one context was naughty in another.
Yes.
And that makes me really sad to hear that. I like wild kids. I like that.
Yeah.
Feeling. When we talk about business, I know you're deeply involved in coaching, as I am, and you get that moment of, I want people to rewild.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean re-naughty.
No.
It just means rewild.
No.
What lesson have you got in terms of wild and naughty for anyone that might be listening?
What lessons do I have on wild and naughty? In terms of how we rewild, or what that means? Yeah. Do you know one thing? Things that I've learned. I'm going to stand up because I think it's at eye level. Sorry, it might be hard if you. I don't believe in normal or the norm. That, you know, for me that went a long time ago. It's like you set your own normal. Nothing's constant. So, what can, for example, feel wild now may not feel wild in a year or 2 years or whatever. So be fluid, be allowed to just shift and move and flow with things that just feel right for you. And as long as you're not causing harm to others as well, and you're doing it very consciously, for me, that is the beauty of rewilding. Pay attention to who you are, and pay attention to the feedback we get. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily accurate or true, but we do things that in some way move people or have an impact on others, and use it all as food for thought, especially the feedback that makes us feel uncomfortable, or maybe paints a picture of ourselves that we don't like or we don't agree with. Not because you have to adopt that, but what it does is it challenges, I think, that framework or that setting of who we are. Be real. Just be real. I mean, there are days where, do you know what? Honestly, I think if Netflix went bankrupt, I would literally be back on that bridge. I mean, and that's me being honest. Netflix has got me through a lot at times. And sometimes it's okay to consciously say, I just want to have this moment with myself to just switch off and do whatever. So be honest with yourself and be real. I think that's the way, and just challenge the no's. Because no's very often is just somebody else's fear. You've hit somebody else's comfort zone, like stretch comfort zone. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with you or yours.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think, just live. I can't. There's no other way. I think to just live.
Oh, I love you. That's fucking amazing. Thank you. Any questions before we go to music? I'm guessing there will be. Yeah, there's one here from Henry.
Well, one's an observation and the other's a kind of question, I guess.
Yeah.
This idea of being, I'm not sure what stops people being themselves. I don't know if it's self-confidence or fear.
Yeah.
Also, I think there's a kind of society obsession with growth.
Yeah.
The economy has to grow.
Oh, jeez.
People have to grow.
Yeah.
We have to have a growth mindset and all the rest of it. But what's wrong with a be mindset? Or just stop mindset? Why do we always have to grow and not just be? This idea of a be mindset, I think, is really important. As there's a time for growth and there's a time for just being.
Yeah.
And I think that gets kind of confused sometimes.
Yeah.
But also, I'd be interested to hear about the work you've done in prisons.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll pick it up. Sorry, I have to. It's sitting down for me.
No, it's
you
not
can
hesitation as you stood up. I agree.
You can see how good I was in the Vipassana. 10 days of sitting still. I have to say, I'd put. So, how many of you are you familiar with the Vipassana? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's basically you go into this space. You can't look. For those of you who are, you can't look at anyone. You can't speak to anyone. There's nothing to distract you. No notepads. Nothing digital. Nothing at all. This is why before I knew I had ADHD, and so I go. So you get this like little circular cushion that you have to sit on, and you're like meditating for probably like 9 hours in slots for 10 days. But I was like, I can't do this. So I kept adding another cushion to try and pad myself. By the time my Vipassana finished, it was like I was on a throne. I could look at, I had so many cushions on. I literally, everyone went to sit cross-legged on the floor. I could just sit down with my knees slightly bent and just look out. And the teacher was looking at me. So you talk about growth. I was definitely growing in the wrong direction on that Vipassana. And at one point, she just looked at me like, what the hell is this woman doing? But a totally irrelevant story, but I don't even know why I do that sometimes. But I think with the growth, it's also how we define growth for me as well. I think there's a difference between more and expanding, and I think growth means different things to different people. Being can be growing for some people. But I think the idea of just pausing and being still, what I've learned is that can be terrifying for most people, because most of us, and I include myself in this, the idea of sitting with yourself and being with yourself can be hell for most people, can be the scariest place to be. And I think it's asking ourselves why we are now in a space. And when I'm talking about sitting, when I'm saying really being quiet, no distractions. No, not even anything. And I'm properly sitting. If somebody said spend 10 days with yourself, just sat on this floor, and somebody will bring your food in and you just sit here quietly. The idea, people are like, yeah, I could do that. But the reality would look very different. So we have to ask ourselves, why? What is it about being with ourselves that it can be so challenging? And I think we do in this society that we live in the Western society, for want of a better word, we've got so many distractions that actually take us away from ourselves all the time. I think it's set up to disconnect us, and it is our job to learn to reconnect, for sure. And when I work with organisations, sometimes you see them moving at such a pace, the best thing they can do is just pause. But the idea of pausing production is terrifying. They'd rather go off the cliff than just pause. The amount of times I say to people, just pause and just like take a moment and check in with where you're going. Is this where you need to be? How are your people? Is this sustainable? No, I don't think I've ever worked with an organisation that's had the courage to pause, because the idea of them getting it wrong or being wrong, whatever, is too much. I don't even know what it is. But yeah, so I think we have created a culture and society that have so many distractions that we have become disconnected. And yeah, being is just beautiful. If we can practice the art of being, it would solve so many things. So many things. The amount of conflict would reduce for a start. We would take care of our planet a lot better. Because when you're being, we feel how we actually are. We are a part of the planet. We're not separate from others, the community. And then you come at things more compassionately, just more curious and open. It's incredible, but I haven't figured it out for myself fully, so I can't preach to anyone. But it's a practice. It's a practice. It's not always an easy one, but it's an important one.
That's a great question and a really good answer. Any more questions in the room? Where are you going to go next, Mary? What are you going to do next? Oh, no,
yeah. What am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Sleep. I'm knackered. I've drove up from Devon, so I'm en route, and I'm like, no. But I mean, apart from the immediate moments, what am I going to do? Do you know, I'm working on a project that I do love at the moment, which is about, with the team, it's actually with Tony and the stuff. We spent the 4 years working on this program. We go into schools for year 7, so that's 10 and 11-year-olds. And what we do during their timetable time is we get them out into nature. So they have some Nature Connect days. We teach them about storytelling, how to find their voice through the art of storytelling, how to use nature as a tool for self-care, the power of Ubuntu, which is about I am because we are. And then they do this community-based, like environmental projects. And the reason we've timetabled it is so that we don't just have the yes children who feel confident to put themselves forward. Everyone gets to get their hands dirty. They make seed bombs. They learn about sustainability. And then they spend a week on a farm. And they wake up, they feed the animals, they cook together. Oh my God, they're transformed. And it's over the course of a whole year. And the teachers get involved and go on this journey with them. And we're trying to get this as part of the national curriculum in this country. So we're piloting it in lots of schools, and we've now got schools reaching out desperate, and we're training the teachers. And that's one of the projects I do that I love. The in-prison mentoring, sorry, I forgot. I don't do that anymore, but that was with the Prince's Trust. That was because at the time of, I'll sort of go and then I'll come back, sorry.
Fine.
That was at the time of 9/11 when there was a lot of hatred towards young Muslim. It was awful. And we were going into schools, particularly schools where there was predominantly a higher percentage of young Muslim children in there, and coaching and mentoring them. And then we were working with the Princess Trust Mosaic to go into prisons. And that's actually where Princess Badiya was the sponsor with Prince Charles. And the idea is they couldn't work out why there was such a high percentage of young black Muslim boys in prison. And it was trying to sort of find out their stories and what was going on and why. And so it was a mentoring program. And it was probably the most powerful experience, one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. And to hear the stories of how, you know, when we talk about those moments, those life-changing moments, where someone happened to be with a group of friends that may be called a gang or maybe not, and was there when something awful happened and they weren't involved, but just by being present, they're now in prison. Or they made a decision that they recognise is wrong, but their whole life has been changed in the most awful way, pointless, senseless way. And for me, it was like, how do we change that? And so some of the decisions that are made for us or that we make, it's a lot harder to pivot, but it's still giving them hope that pivot's always possible. And they were amazing. These boys, amazing. There were some that, yeah, it was too much, but for the majority of them, they were amazing, decent kids. And the way we treated them was horrific. When they were released, they had £5. They couldn't even get to the station, some of them. I was having to give them, it's awful, it's awful. So if you get a chance to volunteer in those spaces, please, please, please do it. Because there was quite a few programs out there. But yeah, that was just from volunteering with a charity that I did that.
Lovely,
Yeah.
thank you. And the last questions from here.
What, when you say, this isn't my question, but just
Yeah.
thank you for your talk. When you said about when you were working in the schools, what
Yes.
is we? What is the organisation?
Oh, okay. So,
That's not my question. That's
okay. So there's been I've worked with a couple of organisations. This program that I'm currently doing is called is Bertha Earth. Bertha Earth, BERTHA, and it's part of the Bertha Foundation. The Bertha Foundation is an incredible foundation. Definitely check them out. They're about human rights activism, storytelling. They do documentaries, films, and they also fund a lot of frontline activism. They're incredible. And the founder of that has funded this children's program. He's personally funding it, the family is. And it's amazing. It's a real privilege.
And then you were talking earlier about you were telling the story, and you got to the bit where you said, "Oh, and someone's no doesn't mean that it's a no. It might be that they're,
Yeah.
you know, you and you know, when we talk or when you talk, you know, it's thinking about how I am.
Yes.
But I'm not working in a silo, am I? I'm working with other people.
Yes.
And that's one of my things at the moment.
Yes.
And so how do you know, what would be some words that you would talk about that? Because, you know, you can try and work on yourself, or
Yeah.
you can try and be aware, but then if you're in a situation, which we usually all are,
Yeah.
usually,
Yeah.
you know, there's
No
stuff
person
going
is an
on.
island. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
100%.
So could you talk a little bit, I mean, you know, how do you sort of...
What, when someone
just-
else says no to me? No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean-
effectively. And do you know, like, at what stage, how do you keep engaging or not engage, or walk or change, or, you know, and talk or not talk,
100%.
or, you know?
I love that question. It's actually a brilliant question, and I really want to say I am working on everything. The stuff I share is I'm working on. So it's not me saying. The more comfortable I am with my no's, the easier it is for people to work with them. That's what I've learned. So the more at ease I am within myself, and there's so many different ways you can say no. So the reason I say that is people respond. I don't know if there's that Maya Angelou quote with people forget what you've said, forget what you've done, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. It's how you make them feel in the process. It's how you work with someone. I've said no in ways where I've never used the word no. But I've explained it in a way where I've included others. We've had conversations, we've mapped things out. And for me, it's a no. For them, they still want to go ahead. There's some situations you have to compromise on, but more than not, if I'm just honest and really comfortable and kind and caring with it, people tend to work with you. That's what I've experienced.
I was hearing it the other way, that it was more that if people are saying, like, you're sort of going along,
Yeah,
however I'm doing something,
yeah,
if, you know, and I can try and change, but if someone's saying no,
yes.
it's not working, and
So-
do you have to leave it? Or?
So when you're saying someone's saying no, so if you're doing something in your personal life, for example,
Yeah.
and
At work, actually,
and somebody else is saying you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't be that way
It's not working.
It's not
Sort of like
working.
The dynamics aren't working. and
between these two people.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's me and someone else.
You and someone else. Okay. So where is the no there? So if the dynamics is not working between you and the...
Well, I thought you were saying, and
Yeah.
I thought you were saying the other person is saying no. No, if you come along, you know, the other, they might be saying yes and I'm saying no. But
Yeah.
if I'm sort of doing stuff
Yeah.
and it's not sort of going
It's
away,
jarring,
It's
it's
not,
not-
being, it's not being received in the way that I would hope. That I'm
Yes.
trying to
I'm with
give
you.
it.
Yeah.
What do you do with those situations?
So I understand what you're saying. I'm going to be super quick because there's two slightly separate for me. So no, what I'm talking about is, say, for example, if I want to do something that feels right for me and someone else is saying, I don't think you should do that, or that's a bad idea, you know, they give you advice. I take into account what sits within their comfort zone and their reality and what sits in mine. And a good example is I was at uni and I wanted to start a business in Holland. It was ridiculous, but I wanted to do it. So I just commuted every week on the overnight bus to Holland. Looking back now, it was mad, but I didn't want to work in a shop. So I just did it. And everyone said no. It was phenomenal. I started a business there, it grew, I moved there. nobody agreed with me at the time that travelling every week on a bus was a good idea. So that's the kind of no energy that I was talking about. The different one in the workplace where there's maybe a conflict or someone wants to do something and the other person disagrees, we also do have to take into account that no person is an island. And for me, that is a communication thing, that's a working with thing. And sometimes that's an acceptance. That if you're in a situation where you can't solely control that, there are some things that if you've gone as far as you can and you've looked for help and you've looked at different ways to do it, is it a pause right now? Is it sometimes just accepting the limitations of that situation? That's not a personal no, that's an environmental no. Your environment there's a barrier there. But I mean, I'm happy to have a separate chat. Yeah,
That's a great conversation.
Yeah.
And those conditions are really hard to navigate, where you need consensus to move on as a team.
Yeah.
And that means a no to you and a yes to you, or a no to you and a yes to you. Difficult.
Yeah.
We need to bring this to an end because we're going to do some singing outside, and not singing. We're not singing. We have a singer outside. But before that, fucking hell.
Oh. Thank you.
And you as well. And look, obviously, it goes without saying, this doesn't happen without people making it happen. So thank you to my family. Dina and Mary, you were incredible. And we're going to move out. We're going to do it quite quickly because none of the neighbours know we're doing this. So we've got Micaiah. Is it Micaiah? I'm worried about getting Micaiah. Micaiah's going to do a 20-minute set outside, acoustic guitar.